Hello everyone, it's Mrs. Garner again, here for my weekly story with you all. Last week we had The Tear Thief by Carol Ann Duffy, and guess what? I had some brilliant writing again from the Jeffs family. Amelia and Abigail this time wrote a fantastic poem inspired by The Tear Thief. So little prizes winging their way to you two, thank you. So well done, girls. This week there will be some writing tasks set at the end of the story, so make sure you listen carefully. So what is it this week? Well, this week it has been chosen by Sefa, Zara and Amelia in 3 Beijing, and they all voted for Cinderella of the Nile by Beverly Naidu. Not a normal version of Cinderella, so this one will be interesting. And Beverly Naidu should ring a few bells, because year 4s, you read and enjoy Journey to Joburg by Beverly Naidu. So let's have a look at this one. So, Cinderella of the Nile. Long, long ago, when pirates freely roamed the seas all around Greece, a beautiful baby girl was born in a village to the north. She had eyes like sapphires and fine red curls. The happy parents, who had waited many years for this child, called her Rhodopis because her cheeks were so rosy. Rhodopis was a kind child who loved milking the goats and helping to make cheese. She collected water from the well, fed the chickens, and did everything her parents asked with a smile. "You are our treasure," they said. However, other villagers were whispering that her greatest treasure was her hair that was the colour of the finest sunset. As Rhodopis, now I'm calling her Rhodopis, she's probably called Rhodopis, so I'm going to go with Rhodopis. As Rhodopis grew, word of her unusual beauty spread over the mountains. Her parents thought that they were really safe living far away from the sea, but news of her beautiful red hair reached a band of pirates. A girl like this could be sold for a big bag of silver coins. Got to be careful, haven't they? So, it was one afternoon a bandit did silently watch Rhodopis. He was watching her as she herded the family's goats at the mountain. She sang sweetly. "Hurry up, my pretty ones," she sang. "No wolves are near. I'll chase them away with my stick here." When Rhodopis drew near, the bandit leaped out and grabbed her. "Oh no, Mama, Papa," she cried, but the bleating of the goats drowned her voice. For days and nights, Rhodopis stumbled up and down mountain paths, bound by a rope. At the end of the 5th night, she felt her legs would give way, but as the sun began to rise, she saw a sheet of silver stretching ahead as far as the sky on the other side. The bandit grinned. "You're going over the sea, my pretty one. If you can see true, that shit there comes just for you." Oh dear. Down by the sea, a bright blue kingfisher landed on a rock beside Rhodopis and cocked its head. Quickly, she plucked a few strands of her hair. The kingfisher neatly grasped them from her hand. Through her tears, she sang softly, "Little bird, you can fly. You are free. Tell my parents you saw me by the sea. My village lies in those mountains there. You'll hear their cries. Please give them my hair." She had barely finished her song when the bandit seized her and waded into the water, with Rhodopis like a sack over one's shoulder. By the time she could turn her head, there was no sign of the little kingfisher. Night and day the boat rolled and swayed. Rhodopis stayed curled like a little mouse between 2 chests. Then one night a storm sent huge waves crashing over everyone, and she thought, "Oh no, we're all going to drown." Yet, when the morning star arrived, the sea was calm. Rhodopis was silent as the pirates cheered, and she heard them shout, "Land ahoy!" A pirate shook her. "Soon we arrive in Samos. Get up, get up." They were sailing towards a piece of land surrounded by the sea. Oh dear. Rhodopis was sold to the highest bidder, and by midday she trembled before the man who had bought her. Too scared to look up, she heard him say, "She is as beautiful as I was told." Her duties were to serve him and tend to his wife's garden. It was light work, and Rhodopis soon learned to do it well. However, her heart remained very heavy. Now there was one field slave who was allowed inside the house. Rhodopis often found the master sitting and listening to this slave. His name was Aesop. That rings a few bells. Now, Aesop was a very good storyteller. Aesop reminded Rhodopis of her father, who loved telling stories about wolves, bears, and other animals that lived in the mountains. There he is. There's Aesop. One day, entering the room, Rhodopis overheard her master complain, "My red-haired girl is very beautiful, but she doesn't smile." Embarrassed, she quickly left. Later, while watering a rose bush in the courtyard, she became aware of Aesop watching her. Oh, I got it wrong. That one's Aesop. He pointed to a tree. "Ah, you have a friend," he said. Rhodopis looked up and saw a tiny owl. Can you see? "Oh, little grey one," she whispered, and for the first time in many weeks, she smiled. From then on, whenever she wasn't busy, Rhodopis would search outside for Aesop. She helped him feed the chickens, milk the goats, and make cheese. She told him about the goats and the little grey owl that lived under the roof of her parents' house, and Aesop taught her about the wildlife of the island. Also, he told her stories that made her smile. However, when she returned to her master's house, she was filled with sadness. This one went on for quite some time, until one day the master had had enough. He became very angry. "You have an easy life in my household, and yet you will not smile for me," he shouted. Even Aesop could not calm the master down. Soon afterwards, the master announced that he had sold his red-haired slave to a merchant who was travelling to the city of Naucratis in Egypt. Poor Rhodopis ran out of the house to find Aesop. Although her friend could not stop her being taken away, he told her a fable. An oak tree boasted that it was stronger than the reeds along the bank of a river. That night, the mighty tree was uprooted in a storm and crashed to earth. The next morning, the reeds were still standing. "We know how to bend," they whispered to the tree. I think there was a moral in that little story. Night and day, wild waves battered the boat, sailing all the way to Egypt. Huddled among other frightened young captives, Rhodopis remembered Aesop and sang a little song to herself. At last, the boat entered a wide river with tall green reeds on each side. As the shaking and shuddering stopped, a sailor cried out, "Look, the great river Nile welcomes us. Give thanks. Blow, wind, blow. I promise to be strong. Watch me bend, not break, with my little song." The next day, a slave master herded the captives off the boat at the port of Naucratis and led them to a busy marketplace. Never had Rhodopis seen so many people. Suddenly, she was snatched from the crowd and placed in front of an old man with a woolly white beard. If you can hear some sounds off camera, that's my husband Neil, who's just got back. Neil, just come round and say hello.
Hi. Hello.
Right, you're going to let me carry on with the story now? Okay. So there she is with all the slaves in Naucratis. So it was that the Greek merchant Charakos bought Rhodopis and took her into his household. After hearing how she had been stolen from her parents in the north of Greece, he treated her more like a daughter than a slave. He insisted that she eat with him, and he bought her new clothes. He even gave her a little house with a garden running down to the river Nile. Now this angered his Egyptian servants, especially 3 sisters who lived in a hut made of mud and reeds. Old Charakos slept a lot, and they were mean to Rhodopis behind her back. Rhodopis did everything to be friendly, but they rubbed dirt into her clothes. They washed and dropped sand into the food she'd prepared. "Huh, so you think you're better than us," they laughed. Rhodopis never said anything, but did the work again as she hummed to herself, "Blow, wind, blow, watch me bend, not break." She's clever, isn't she? Remembering Aesop, she made friends with the ginger cat and pet monkey that lived with Charakos. Down by the river, she talked with Hoopoe and Hippo, who loved to play splashing games, while cat and monkey played hide and seek among the reeds. They made Rhodopis laugh, helping her to forget her sadness. After washing the clothes, she would sing and dance for her animal friends, swaying this way and that. "With my little song, I promise to be strong." One afternoon, Charakos woke up early from a nap. When he couldn't find Rhodopis in the house, he walked down to the river, and there he found her dancing barefoot. He watched, hidden behind a palm tree. A few days later, Charakos presented Rhodopis with a pair of rose-red slippers embroidered with gold thread. "Oh, thank you," she whispered. "Never before have I seen such beautiful slippers." Soon afterwards, the Pharaoh, now he's the king of Egypt, sent out an invitation to all his subjects to attend a feast at his palace in Memphis. Rumours spread that he was actually looking for a bride. The 3 sisters were excited. They would dress in their finest clothes, and the Pharaoh would notice one of them. Of course, they said absolutely nothing to Rhodopis or their master, who rarely left the house. Instead, they made up a story. "Our parents are really ill and they need us urgently," they cried with false tears. Charakos agreed that they should go immediately, and Rhodopis offered to do all their chores. Every day, Rhodopis carried a basket of clothes to the river. She removed her new beautiful ruby red slippers so as not to wet them. One day she was bent over the water when a vast winged shadow swooped over her. She looked up to see Horus, the falcon god, soaring upwards with a rose-red slipper gripped in his sharp talons. "For pity's sake," she begged, "please bring back my slipper." But the falcon god of the sky was gone. Her animal friends tried to comfort her as she cried hot tears. Horus flew south along the valley of the Nile to the great palace at Memphis. Pharaoh Amasis was tired of all the feasting. Indeed, some of his subjects had begun to quarrel. He was listening to their complaints when a small rose-red slipper fell from the sky into his hand. He glimpsed the falcon flying away. "Horus has sent me a sign," Amasis declared. "The owner of this red slipper must be found." Messengers were sent east and west, north and south. The 3 sisters arrived at the palace just in time to see them disappearing in their chariots. How furious they were to learn that the feast had ended and the Pharaoh himself was about to leave. When they heard about the search for the owner of a small rose-red slipper with gold thread, they looked at each other in disbelief, but they said nothing. The royal musicians played their instruments as the royal barge set sail with Pharaoh Amasis. Word spread quickly. Day after day, young women from all villages along the Nile hurried to its banks for their chance to try on the slipper, but none had a foot that was small and slender enough. As the royal barge approached Rhodopis, Rhodopis held back to watch from behind some reeds. How amazed she was to see the king, the Pharaoh, and he had her rose red slipper in the hands of a royal servant. The three sisters jostled with others to try it on, but once again no one's foot fit the tiny shoe. "This is the slipper of a child," the sisters complained loudly. Just then Rodolphus heard a bird cry on the other side of the reeds. A bright blue kingfisher had accidentally caught itself in a net. Stretching forward, Rodolphus gently untangled its wings and set it free. It reminded her of another kingfisher on another shore long, long ago. Now the Pharaoh saw all this and was curious. Why had this red-haired girl not come forward with the others? He signalled to his servant to take the slipper to her. As her foot slid in neatly, Rodolphus laughed shyly. Pharaoh Amasis descended from his barge to greet Rodolphus. "Horus chose well. You are kind as well as very beautiful," he said. The three sisters cried out, "No, no, no, great Pharaoh, she's just a slave. She's not even Egyptian." Waving them away, Amasis declared that Rodolphus would be his queen and wife. It is said that Rodolphus and Chirakos shed tears as they said goodbye. Did she ever see her parents or Aesop again? We don't know, but they surely remained in her heart, and legend says that Rodolphus and her Pharaoh lived happily together for the rest of their lives. The end. And that was beautifully illustrated by Marjan Vafayan, Cinderella of the Nile. I hope you enjoyed that. Now, your writing challenges. I think I'm going to set you a choice of 2 writing challenges today. Your first challenge is to find out for me all about the River Nile, which I do believe is the longest river in the world, or is that the Amazon? Please create a fact sheet all about the River Nile. That would be brilliant. And the second challenge is, why don't you have a go at writing a story, a fairy tale, the Cinderella fairy tale if you like, but set it in a different place, a different time. Give it a twist. Like in this story, it's different from the traditional tale that a lot of us know. So have a go at writing your own version of Cinderella. Could be Cinderella of Manorfield, Cinderella of Walthamstow, Cinderella of Mile End. It's up to you. You can do your own version of Cinderella. Okay, so 2 choices, a fact file about Egypt, the River Nile, and you can do Egypt. Second challenge is to write your own version of a Cinderella fairy tale. Okay, really looking forward to reading what you've written. You can send it in at the email down there, and have a good week. Bye.